Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. All right, welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share to our podcast on all of our social media platforms. Make sure also you guys are checking us out on our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube. Make sure you guys are checking us out there, where not only can you find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, but you also can find the Girl Dad Discussions podcast there as well. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where I talk with other girl dads about the daddy-daughter relationship in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. So make sure you guys are checking us out there. Also, our product of the week, as you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase. And so our product of the week is our purpose journal, as well as our purpose planner, because I believe that we are to journal where we are and where we've been in order to, be able to focus on where we're going, as well as plan for our future. So you guys can get your copy of our purpose planner and our purpose journal on Amazon. The links will be in the descriptions below. Make sure you guys go and check that out. But today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest. Miss Abigail, how are you doing?
I am well. I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Thank you for being here. First of all, I want to say thank you for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So, do me a favor, Abigail. Introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. Well, I am Abigail, the Warrior Princess. My ministry is Battle Ready Wives. I basically train, teach, and equip and empower women to fight for their marriages, but mostly to empower them to be the best selves, to be who God has called and created them to be. I am an author. I am an elder. I a certified coach and mentor as well, and I just love helping people, especially women, but anyone. I believe that my mission is to set captives free. The best way I do that is by exposing the lies, really having the hard conversations, and teaching people the truth of God's word.
All right, all right. I love that. That sounds like we're gonna have an inspirational, but that wasn't what I wanted to say. I want to say interesting. That's the word I was looking for. We're gonna have an interesting conversation, and I love the concept. Me myself having been married and divorced, unfortunately, I always look for learning to be a better person, right? And because hopefully marriage is still on the table as at some point. I'm always looking to get better and learn from what I did and whatever mistakes I made in past relationships, to become a better, be a better man, better husband in the future. And so definitely with having one thing that I know, it takes two to make it work, right? It takes two. You got
Absolutely.
to be in it for the long haul. But then when you
Yeah.
are with whoever your spouse is, they have to be in it for the long haul too. And so I can definitely appreciate the work that you do to equip the wives with the power that they need to hang in there a little longer. So let's go back a little bit, right? So I always like to hear the backstory of how we got to become the person that we are today. And so, what was your backstory? That who were you prior, and what was that thing that kind of led you to even become this version of yourself, and to start then working to strengthen other wives and the women that you work with.
So how far back you trying to go?
Hey, hey, as
So
far as back as we,
no, we
I'm 50, right? I'm 50, so I can only go back so far. So as
well,
far
we can't
as
go. We won't. I won't go that far back, but I would go back to where basically what really created or inspired the woman that you see today. I
yes.
believe I've always been bold, so to speak. Most times when people see me, I can be a bit reserved, but for the most part, I am who I am. However, I believe that the woman that you see today, not that that marriage molded me into this person, but it did something for me.
Mhm.
So although yes, I am divorced, and it is kind of interesting because my ministry is battle ready wives. I fight for marriages. I come alongside women, and my marriage wasn't saved. But I'm here to tell you that God still blessed me within that marriage, as
Mhm.
toxic as it was. But with everything that I learned within it, the thing is that God still used it to bless me. And one of the main things that I learned out of it was the importance of, or the influence a wife has in marriages, and the importance of praying and your authority. So that experience that I went through, it basically birthed my ministry, and the woman that you see today. Although the marriage did not survive, I am 100% confident I am a better wife because of the experience. And so I do not regret the experience at all. I am very thankful for the marriage. Although it did not survive, God blessed me tremendously in it. And I'm happy to talk about it. So I'm going to stop rambling.
Oh,
Hopefully that answered your question, because I just gave you a little skim because we got a lot to touch and talk about. But basically I would say that because there was a lot. The reason why I look at the marriage as a blessing because it was very toxic. It's like it really was toxic. However, but even in spite of, there were still so many lessons that I learned. I like to say God saved me from myself, and He used the marriage to do it. Because and when I say toxic, I'm not in the mindset of, I understand, we like to toss out the terms narcissist and stuff like that. And I've
mhm.
done some extensive study on those. But the thing is with that is you can't have one without the other. So I think it's kind of like unbalanced. We talk about narcissism a lot, although I did experience a lot of that. The thing is that God exposed me. He exposed my toxicity. He exposed the areas, that I like, the areas that were insecure. Like there's so many things. I was like, me? I'm the problem?
Mhm.
I beg your pardon. And that's why I'm so thankful for the experience, because the woman that I am, although I felt like I came into the marriage very prepared, wanting to be that submissive wife, there was a lot that was exposed that I just did not know was there. And I'm so like eternally thankful for the experience.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to we'll touch on that. I definitely
Hmm.
want to touch on that, but I want to go back to something that you said earlier, which was as toxic as your relationship was, your marriage was, there still was some things that came out of it that God will use, right?
Yeah.
And I agree 100% with that, because if it had not been for my marriage and unfortunately my divorce, I wouldn't be on this podcast. because that is how everything kind of started with myself and those who
Mm-hmm.
know my story. Um, but I'll just throw it back a little bit myself. I end up going through a divorce, and after coming through the divorce, I began to look at my dating history. And one of the things that I realized that every woman I've ever dated was a fatherless daughter. And
Mm-hmm.
so that led me, me being the person that who I am, it's like, okay, how can I help? Right. And so I end up starting a Instagram page called Friends of Fatherless Daughters. And I would go on Instagram and I would just give my opinion as a father, as a girl dad, as a brother with 5 sisters, being raised in a two-parent household by my dad, watching my dad raise my sisters, just giving my viewpoint from a man and a father, like I said, and a girl dad on ways to help fatherless daughters, for
Mm-hmm.
fatherless daughters to help. And I started doing that, and then I was asked to be on a podcast and several podcasts, and then one of those podcasts, I had a conversation with the host afterwards, and he was like, "You know what? You should have your own podcast." And started that podcast, and now who we are, almost 200 episodes later. You know what I mean? But it
Yeah.
started because I went through this transition of you know marriage and divorce, unfortunately. And I always like to say this, that it has nothing to do with my ex-wife. My ex-wife and I are still very good friends. We've been known each other since kindergarten. So one of the things that was very important to us, even during the divorce, was to make sure that we didn't lose our friendship, even though we were losing our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were friends longer than we were married. And so we've been able to do that. So anytime I talk about, my story of how I came here, even though I would say it came out of my divorce, it is not, any reflection on my ex-wife, who's again my one of my best friends. But that being said, coming out of that, there were some things that I learned about myself too that I had to take in consideration. And I've been divorced twice, and so I always say, all right, it's only one person that was there in both of those marriages, and that's
Mm-hmm.
me. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
what did I do
Accountability is
wrong?
important.
Yeah.
Yep.
What did I do wrong? What can I do different? And learning those things. So yes, like you to go back to why I mentioned all of that was because yes, no, even though there are some things that transpired in the marriage that probably we didn't like, yet and still those same things God would use through us or to us to change some things within ourselves to make us better, and even to even change use it also to change some things for other people to make other people better, even though
Mm-hmm.
you had to go through that experience. And so yeah, I do believe 100%, like you said, that no matter what it is, God still can use it for our better. And we are examples of that because here we are.
Yeah. Yep. He works all things together for those who are called, love God and are called according to his purpose. I believe that 100%.
Yeah, yeah, and even with that, I always say, we as church people, and I grew up in the church, and my whole backstory with that, we love to quote that. You know what I mean? All things work the good for the good of those that love the Lord, and but I think we forget that when we say that it says all, all. Not
Hmm.
just the good things, not just the bad things, but all of
All
it.
things.
So yeah, if we really believe that, then we have to embrace the good with the bad as well. Um, but I wanna go back a little bit because we kind of touched on it a little bit, but you mentioned about looking back on your marriage and then realizing like, oh, some of these things was my fault, or I played a part in some of these things.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I think when we go back and look at our marriages, or look at our relationships just in general, and we acknowledge that, have that acknowledgement of accountability to really look at what parts we played, and how can we do better, then I think it helps us as we move forward. And so in your experience, how important was that, that even going through your marriage or going through that, being able to see where, okay, maybe I could have done this better, and then how do you use that even in your story to empower these other wives to say, hey, you try to maybe look into these areas where you might be a little blinded, yourself because you're focusing on your husband, but maybe it's some things that you might need to adjust to.
Yeah, one of the things that I quickly learned, and I always talk about, and any Christian would know, like when you go to pray to God about a certain situation, He always turns it back on you.
Mhm.
And so that's the key thing that usually I'd be like, when I looked into it, when I realized, whoa, so I'm a part of the problem. Okay, so that's one main thing because, and I'll just kind of touch a little bit on the narcissist topic, because it's talked about a lot. And believe you me, we do have some individuals we deal like that, but I think it's just so one sided. And I'm
Mhm.
bringing it up because that's the key thing with a lot of the process of the women that I deal with, because we're not talking about him. And this is not excusing him for whatever has happened. That's not saying it's okay. We're not
Mhm.
doing that. But it's to empower the woman to realize, one, you are not the victim. And also, two, to help you look at things from a different perspective. Because a lot of times we're looking at it as like me, what I'm doing wrong, or what's being done to me, rather. Like I'm hurt, like they're ignoring me, they're abandoning me, they're being mean, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. And the fact is those probably are things they should do, but sometimes we tend to just look at the surface things, like let's go a little bit deeper. So what the experience really did was realizing that there's something deeper going on. And so the more God exposed me and exposed my insecurities, I started looking at my spouse differently. Like, oh, hold on, they might be doing this because of this. And not just my spouse, anyone that you come into interaction with, you realize,
Mhm.
okay, they're angry, but it may be something a little bit deeper. So the more I turned, focused on myself, focused on the plank in my eye, and looked, I was like, okay, what are these issues? Like, why am I always so defensive? They said this, but I'm really always to be trying to like snap back really quickly. Like, why am I doing that?
Mhm.
And I had to take those questions to God, because He was really the only one that can really show them to me. And so it got to a place where I was like, I cannot, like I can't focus on anybody else right now. Like he already done show all these things about me. Like we gotta focus on this. Like I ain't got time to focus on what they're doing from not doing, because now God has just exposed me. But the exposing is not to bring shame. The exposing is not to even, point blame. It's for healing. We have to, like, it's hard sometimes when these things are exposed, but it's necessary for healing, and healing is your responsibility. And so I'll just close with this real quickly, because I did brought up the point with the narcissist. Here's the thing, and I want to just kind of do this disclaimer. When I'm talking, I'm not a medical professional, I'm a mental health professional. So we understand a lot of times when we're using this term, we need to make sure we're cautious with that, because we're not necessarily diagnosing someone, but we do see the traits, right?
Mhm.
It walks like a duck, talks like a duck, likely a duck, but we're not necessarily diagnosing the person. But we're, we are acknowledging, hey, these things are there. But one of the things that in my study of really, really doing a deep dive on narcissism, at some point in time, it's like, yeah, this is what they are. But I really, because I'm a woman of God and I do practice what I teach, I don't necessarily believe in labeling them that, because we're going to speak the word over the situation, right?
Mhm.
But it's kind of be like, listen, I am experiencing these things, right? So I like to look at things from the spiritual perspective. And so what's behind that, narcissist, or, spiritually, is what we call the Jezebel spirit. After further research and study on the topic, and understanding that you can't have, how to say, Jezebel didn't work alone.
Mhm.
Jezebel was able to be in the place that she was in, and okay, let me, because some people are like, who is Jezebel and what?
Right.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm a Bible teacher at heart, so I
Yeah.
started talking about Bible, and I have not given, like, some discourse in who is Jezebel.
Right.
So we'll just give a short example. When we talk about the Jezebel spirit, we understand that that particular individual, when we use the term, we understand that there's a particular influence behind that personality,
Mhm.
that person. So now we just coin it as Jezebel spirit. But for those who may not know, in the Bible, there is a particular queen. Her husband was the king, and his name is Ahab. So they were one of the kings of Israel in the Old Testament. I believe, if you ever heard the story of Elijah when he prayed down fire, he got a little scared because Jezebel was out after him. That's that whole story. For the sake of time, I'm just truncating it. However, if you have any
Mhm.
questions, feel free to comment, and I'll be happy to answer any confusions that you may have. So basically, I brought that up to say we understand what we call like the narcissist. We really, understand there's a Jezebel spirit behind that. The reality is you can't have a Jezebel without an Ahab because their dynamic is toxic. So like a lot of times we just focus on, oh, they're this, but something attracted them. And this is not to blame the person, but it's just a kind of, we need to open up and have this conversation.
Mhm.
There was something within you that allowed that. There was something within you, and for me, I'll just speak for myself. There was brokenness, there was insecurity. So I did not realize the places within myself that was welcoming and opening up this particular spirit to have dominance in my life because of my insecurities. And so I only bring it up because this is how we heal. We have to look back at us. So I try to take the lens off of pointing it to others and be like, all right, let's address us. Let's look at within us. Let's see what's going on. Because the moment you get to that place where you can acknowledge and take accountability, not blame, not go into victim mentality, just take accountability and you heal, you will no longer have to deal with that person in your life. One of two things are going to happen. They're going to line up and start to kind of face themselves, or they're going to leave. One of the two is going to happen. But either way, that personality won't be in your life any longer.
Yeah, yeah. And I like something. I want to go back to something that you said because when it comes to uh, the people that we attract, they are attracted to something, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
attracted to you for a reason. And which going back to what I was saying with the fatherless daughters is like there's a reason why every woman I've ever dated was a fatherless daughter. Like there's something that I have to acknowledge within myself that's attracting that. You know what I mean? That is that attracting that personality. And I
Mm-hmm.
think when we take accountability, excuse me, I think when we take accountability and take ownership of the parts that we play in our relationships, because
Yeah.
in every relationship that you're in it. You know what I'm saying? Like you
Yeah.
can look at the other person, and let's say if you had 10 relationships, you can look at all 10 of them, but there's only one person that was in all
One
10 of those
common
relationships.
denominator.
Yeah, and that's yourself. And so when you start, and we can go, I want to, kind of go into the healing part of it,
Yeah.
and work on acknowledging some things and ways to help us to heal. But I think that it's important that we acknowledge that, okay, what part did I play in this,
Yeah.
and why do I attract this certain amount of this certain people, this certain demographic. And that was something that I had to come to terms with myself once I came to the realization, like, dang, everybody I've dated was a fatherless daughter. Like, how was that possible? You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't out
Mm-hmm.
here like, let me look for the girls that ain't got no daddy. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, that wasn't my mindset. And then coming from a two-parent household, that wasn't even my example growing up, and so I had to
Mm-hmm.
really look into myself and realize, okay, what are the things, that's attracting or attractive to this demographic that you keep attracting. And is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? And all the time it's not necessarily bad or good, but it's just acknowledging that, oh, this is what it is. So if I'm attracting this type of person, then what can I do to better myself? And this is how I had to look at it. What can I do to better myself that I can be a blessing to these people that I'm coming in contact with, instead of, having relationships that end in hurt, especially if they're already coming into, my environment with some hurt from the past anyway. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to add to that. I want to be a blessing. I want to, do something to be able to help them. And that was kind of, again, how I started this whole thing that led me to the podcast, was because I started looking for that. I started looking for coaches, for fatherless daughters, and having conversations with them just so I can be a better person, for those that I come in contact with. And so when
Mm-hmm.
we get to that part of acknowledgement that, okay, this is a part that I play in
Mm-hmm.
our marriages and our relationships, then we have to acknowledge, okay, is there something that needs to be healed within me in order to heal these relationships, right? Because like you
Yeah.
said, you can't have one without the other. And so if there's something that needs to be healed in them and they're broken, then they got to be attracted to me for something that's in me, either that's healing towards them or something that's broken as well that I
Yeah.
have to acknowledge. And so, in your own journey and as you, begin to help the wives to even process it, from that viewpoint, what are some of the ways or some tips that we could use to kind of, or they could use to kind of help us to be able to acknowledge where we are, to acknowledge the hurt that maybe needs to be healed within ourselves, and then how do we use that to be a positive moving forward in their marriages.
Yeah. So what I'm about to say, it's not just for wives. Unfortunately, my audience is normally just women, but understand that this can be applied for men as well.
Yeah.
And so the key thing is like one of the things that I learned as far as what was exposed was my insecurities was
Mhm.
exposed. One of them was I how do I say this? So I lacked connection. And here's a better way to attack the question. A lot of times, what is the main reason why you got married? And I feel like some people, may have like some fairly, realistic expectations. But then there's also sometimes expectations that are, how to say, that are unrealistic. And sometimes it's actually subconscious as far as why you have those expectations, right? And so the expectation a lot of times in marriage is to cure loneliness.
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily feel like I went into marriage, thinking that marriage would cure that. I didn't necessarily thought, or at least thought that I was lonely. I didn't. But it was there. Sometimes, even if it's there, even in a little capacity, it's still there.
Yeah.
And so there was a little loneliness then. I didn't realize it because in my single season, I felt like I was fine. I was doing things. I went to Bible college, was, living it up. I wasn't like dying to be married. I was just doing, just enjoying my single season the best that I could. But I got married and I was like, it's not giving what it's supposed to give. Like what's going on? Like, so in my marriage, I was more lonelier. Like I cried more in my marriage than I
Mhm.
did single. Like I didn't have fits, where I would cry like, Lord, I just want to be married. No, like I knew, marriage was gonna be a thing for me. I knew that was God's will for me. Um, so I wasn't like crying like I wasn't tired of being single. I just, just felt like, okay, this is time, right? But I realized like there was loneliness that I had. And maybe like in my single season, I didn't really see it because I'm like by nature, I'm an introvert. So I do enjoy being alone. But
Mhm.
somehow subconsciously, there was a part of me that I guess felt like there's some type of level of value that came from being married. Because, sometimes how it's, portrayed or, posted in
Mhm.
a church. And don't get me wrong, marriage is good. I just still desire marriage and I'm confident I will be married again, 100%. However, there's an assumption sometimes that marriage is going to heal a loneliness. And
Mhm.
I found myself being in marriage like just completely lonely. What was exposed was that there was a lack of connection with myself. Like I didn't have a problem being alone. I don't need to be, have a lot of friends. But there was still a lack of connection internally within myself. So I understood that a part of that, and I bring that up to say, because the steps that I would say is we have to fix that connection. The most important connection that you have a lot of times why we're experiencing loneliness, and you would even experience loneliness when there's a lot of people around. So loneliness don't even mean
Mhm.
there's no one around, because maybe you can get in that marriage and be completely lonely, completely, when you're dealing with someone ignoring you, not talking to you, the silent treatment, the stonewalling, all the things, and still be in a place that you find yourself lonely even with someone in your bed. And so realizing that in the only cure for loneliness is a connection and to the right thing. So the first thing is we need to be connected to the source, and the source is the Father. And then you want to make sure that you're connected with yourself. You want to make sure that the relationship that you have with yourself is solid. See, I didn't do that. I was expecting my spouse to do things for me that I wasn't even doing for myself.
Mhm.
I'm expecting them to, do the words of affirmation because that's my love language. But yet, like, man, would you just, speak kind words to yourself? So that's another thing, the connection. You want to focus on those things, and this can be done even within the marriage, even if it's just like as horrible as it is. You start focusing on the healing, that healing connection with the source, which is the creator. You want to get connected with him, then get connected with yourself, and then start from there, work on the areas that need to be healed, because the more you work on that relationship with yourself, the other relation with God, then you're with yourself, the other relationships are going to fall in line, or they're going to fall in away, because people tend to, because what attracts you is your trauma. A lot of times, you're trauma bonded, and so when healing starts to take place within you, like I said, one of two things are going to happen. The toxic individuals, whether it's a family member or a spouse, they will it'll either trigger something with them, which they'll want to start searching for healing for themselves, or they're going to leave because they can't stand it, because they're just so used to the toxicity and they're not willing to let it go.
Yeah, and I think one of the major things that you mentioned it about coming in and getting to know ourselves, right? Really beginning to
Yeah.
look at ourselves. And like I said, I'm 49, right? 49 finna be 50 soon, right? And so in this space that I'm in, and I think a lot of people, because when we start getting around our age, my age, I don't know how old you are, so I'm not gonna say we. When, when I start getting around my age, right? We started going through what we consider midlife crisis. And I think that
Hmm.
the midlife crisis is because we lose ourselves and we don't take the time to figure out who we are in this moment of our lives. Because generally around this time of our lives, our kids are growing up, so the kids are leaving. You know, uh,
Hmm.
that's a big thing. If we have children, the kids are leaving, because a lot of times when we get married, especially in marriage, we get married, it's like, oh, it's all about us. And then you have kids, right? And then it's like, oh, now
Yeah.
it's all about the kids,
Yeah.
and then once the kids are removed and grow up and move away or whatever, now it's like, oh, it's about us again. But now we're not who we were 20 years ago when we first got married,
Yeah.
before we had kids and all of that. And so we have to be able to, number one, get to know ourselves, like, okay, who am I in this uh time, in this season of my life? Who am I? And then who are we as a union in our marriage in this season too? Because we are two people that change and have changed, and I think that we don't, a lot of times, don't take the time to really begin to invest in ourselves and knowing who we are, like ourselves on a deeper level. And because we don't do that, it's hard for us to get our mate to appeal to us the way we need to be appealed to, because we don't know. You know what I mean? And you mentioned
Yeah.
like the love languages. If we don't know what our love language is, how can we expect somebody to speak it? You know what I mean? Because it'll be foreign to us as well. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So I think that we need to go. I think that's a very important part in our healing journey. Actually, like the start of our healing journey is really beginning to know who we are and beginning to know ourselves on a deeper level. And then even going back to what you said earlier, when we started talking about the accountability, to finding out, okay, if this is who I am and these are some things that hurt me, why do they hurt me? You know what I mean? Did they always hurt me? Because again, we change. So you may find some things that in your single season, that didn't bother you at all. But
Yeah.
now in your marriage season, now all of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm kind of sensitive when somebody says something to me. But when you're single,
Hmm.
somebody said the same thing, you're like, psh, it didn't matter. But
Yeah.
now, because you're expecting something, maybe, or you're expecting to be communicated in a way, in a different way, and now that you're not getting that communication the way that you want it or think that you want it, now you're feeling some type of way about it. But it takes all of us to really be able to look at ourselves and say, okay, why is that? Why am I feeling this way? Why, when, you know, Abigail told me, I don't like your haircut because you bald, it felt, made me feel some type of way. But when John, you know, Sally over there said it, I didn't feel some type of way. Why is that? Why is that same sentence come with different weight to it when it's coming from different people?
Yeah.
But we only get to know that when we really start looking at ourselves and really digesting, like, who am I in this season of my life? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really like that. So before we get out of here, right? Before we get out of here, I want you, one of the things you mentioned to me, right? Because I know you
Okay.
have the program,
Hmm.
right? So I want you to talk a little bit about a little bit more about the program and definitely how, you know, the women can get in contact with you to work with you. But you also mentioned about a project that you're working on, um, be it your book. So tell us a little bit more about that, and so we're looking forward to that, and then
Yeah.
also share with us more about your program.
Yeah, absolutely. So my book is called The Marriage That Was Meant to Break Me, But God. And so basically, a lot of those sensitive areas that I was talking about, like really, the book is my testimony of
Mhm.
how God saved me from myself, and He used this marriage to do it. Because I believe the marriage just really exposed these areas that there was so much brokenness. And mind you, I thought I was good, Bible college graduate, know the word, preach the word, teach the word, all the things. But there was still so many of these brokenness, these places that were just dormant that didn't realize was actually there. So the book is, I don't necessarily go into gory details about the marriage because I don't necessarily like to highlight the bad. Like, we're
Mhm.
past that. And again, and I think for me, a lot of times the way how I teach is, but I live by example. And that's why I say, really the book is exposing me. It's exposing my flaws, the things that I've learned. It's exposing some sensitive, details and topics that I kind of like telling myself, really. It's not about like, talking about, oh, well, this is what my ex-husband did to me. Da, da. No, it's more so like, hey, these are the things that I experienced. This is what kind of came out of it. So it's my testimony, really, of how God saved me from myself by exposing these things. And so I really hope that the book really encourages others to look into themselves and work on that healing. And that's going to take time. It's not like an overnight process. I'm still going on this journey. I'm just not where I used to be. But I'm thankful for the process. But I think, too, the book also opens up the doors to have some hard conversations. So I
Mhm.
kind of left things a little, not like, again, I didn't go into detail about certain things, but it still kind of leaves the door open. It's like, hey, when you said this, like, what did you mean? Let's talk about that. Because I think that's what the book is really going to do. It's going to be like a conversation starting a lot of pieces, but it's really just my testimony of how God saved me from myself. Something that was meant to destroy me because it's a lot when you go through, if anyone has been through a toxic experience dealing with narcissistic abuse. And again, I think a lot of times when people talk about abuse, you think about abuse, you only think about physical. There was no physical abuse, but there was emotional neglect, and that still can be just as detrimental to any individual. So I just share like how, despite all of that, here's the wisdom that came out of that. Here's the healing that came out of that process. So it's my testimony.
I love it. I love it. And so tell us a little bit more about your program and how can the women get in contact with you, and what do you hope that your program, you know, will give them once they finish?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on battlereadywives.com. From that page, it kind of opens up all the different things that I have going on. So right now, I'm just working on the book. There is some programs that I'm having coming up. I think the next one that I'll be working on shortly is my Hush and Pray challenge, and it's really a 30-day prayer challenge. Really, whereas again, I'm a prayer warrior, so I teach on how to pray. I teach about the importance of prayer. I teach about your your authority in prayer. And but the thing is, I'm more practical with my teaching. So each day would have like a different prayer topic, and I'm working on a journal to go alongside of it. But with the program that I want to have, because I did this challenge before, but with this time I want it to be a little bit more intense, whereas instead of I'm just leading you in video on prayer, I want to be able to have a space where we really talk about some things. And I want to really help people to see what prayer really is, because I think there's a misconception of what prayer is, and in a lot of ways people use prayer as a tool for manipulation and witchcraft, and that's not what it is. So just to make sure you have the right heart posture, so really teaching on the basics of prayer, how to pray, and cultivating that place of prayer. So that's just an upcoming program that I have. I also right now have a devotional, 5-day devotional, that you can get on my website. That it's for free. This is for those who when you prayed for something, you didn't get it, but still finding the broken, that God can still even use the broken things. And so that's just a devotional that I have. It's a free gift. So if you go on the website and you just go on the link for free gift, that'll be there for you. I have many different things coming up. I feel like I'm now really kind of like my coming out season. So that's just the things that I have on mind right now. But for me, the impact I want to have is to really set captives free. So you'll see me up around, like going wherever I can to just share the message, not only just share my testimony, but really try to have these conversations, because I just want people to be healed. I feel like, especially within the church, everyone is spiritually healed. If you focus on your spiritual healing, your spiritual growth, that's great. A lot of people focus on the physical, going work out, being, fit. That's good too and important, but a lot of we're three-part beings. So that's we have we're spirit, we possess a soul, we have live in a body. And so a lot of focus on the spirit, a lot of focus on the body, but not enough focus on the soul. The reason why we see a lot of inconsistencies, for the lack of a better term, within the
Mhm.
body, within the church, for those you might have dealt with church hurt, and a lot of hypocrisy within the church. A lot of that is because you have these individuals that are powerful spiritually, but they're broken in their soul, and your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. And so I'm on a mission to really help not just women, but that's just my main audience, but even men too, because the reality is women have very huge influence. And so I believe if we start from the woman, get her healed, the impact that she will have in her home, on her children, in her family, in the church, it will transcend far than you will ever believe. And so that's pretty much what I have coming up. There's a lot that's kind of stirring in my mind that I can't necessarily release yet. But as far as I'm not open yet for like any one-on-one. Those are some things I'm just trying
Mhm.
to restructure and get that set up. But if the Lord leads me to do something, if someone reaches out and the Lord leads me, I will absolutely do it. But I'm working a couple of different things. So if you just stay tuned on battlereadywives.com, all the information is on there, as well, even some other podcasts that I've been on as well, and the different, basically products and stuff that I have coming out.
All right, all right. Okay. So, Abigail, first of all, I want to say thank you again for being on. I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise and your vision. I want you to have the last word. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, inspiration, prayer, even however you feel, and also, again, just reiterate your social media where we can find you in order to follow you. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Make sure you guys are checking us out on our our main website, which is the Deal Heal Fulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org. Because our mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. So make sure you guys are checking us out there. Also, make sure you guys check me out at my new website, which is my speaker's website, because as you guys know, I am a professional speaker and podcaster. And so if you go to www.ernestjamesspeakslife.com, you'll find more information about me as a speaker to have me to come through as a speaker and a workshop facilitator for your school or organization. Definitely go and check me out there. Again, that's ernestjamesspeakslife.com. Make sure you guys check me out. Also, ebooks by ejames.com. I have several ebooks that I've written again to help us on this journey that we are on, including the core four, which is the four core values that every daughter should get from her father. That is a book, ebook that we actually talk about on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Um, because I think it's very important. Also, we have the From Males to Men ebook, and one of my favorite, which is Forgiving Me, the 4-Step Guide to Self Forgiveness. All of those are available at ebooks by ejames.com. Make sure you guys go there and check us out. Also, check out our inspirational t-shirt line, deal2healtees.com. That's deal, the number two, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Make sure you guys are checking us out there. And last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops bi-monthly talking about everything surrounding forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world, all conversations around forgiveness. So whenever you're listening to or watching this podcast, either a workshop just ended or there's one coming up. So you can go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for our next forgiveness workshop, or go to Eventbrite and look up forgiveness workshop sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission. The virtual workshops are absolutely free, but the information is priceless. So I want to make sure you guys go and check us out there. Again, that's forgivenessmission.com. So again, Miss Abigail, I want to say thank you so very much for being on.
Thank you for
Thank you for
having me.
sharing your gift with us. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Absolutely. So on all social media platform, you can find me at the Battle Ready Wife. So that's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. It's at the Battle Ready Wife. And I want to just leave you with this one word, because this word has been stirring in my spirit for several months now, and it's the word capacity. I feel like when we understand our capacity, or even consider another individual's capacity, a lot of things, we'll approach a lot of things a little differently. And so let me just elaborate real quickly. When I say capacity, do you have the capacity to do a thing? Sometimes what we do, we don't really count the cost of how much it will cost for us to give it. So sometimes we may be able to give financially, but do you have the capacity emotionally? And then sometimes when we look at another individual, you might be, so you're expecting something from them that they do not give to you, but do they even have the capacity to do it? Because it may not be a situation whereas they don't want to, maybe they can't. But if you focus on understanding your capacities, to stop saying yes to everything, but to take time to really count the cost of how much that will cost, and do I have enough for it? And not just physically, do I have enough emotionally? Because a lot of times, like I said, physically we might be fine, even spiritually we might be fine, but maybe we may not have enough capacity emotionally to take on another person's burden in that moment. And it's okay to say no. No is a sentence without any explanation. And so the question would be is, do I have the capacity to do this today? I may have the capacity tomorrow, but I may not have the capacity today. So I just want to leave you with this. When you think of, just think about capacity, and continue before you answer or respond to anything. Just take note. Do I have the capacity for this today? When they keep calling you, and because they always like to run to you because you're the one that always show up because that's what they need. Do I have the capacity for this today? Because sometimes what we do is when we either go over what we have capacity for, that's why we burn out. That's why we have the depression, because you are taxing your body physically in a lot of times, and also emotionally, because you're overriding your capacity levels. So I just want to leave you with that food for thought.
All right, all right. And we can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.